Now that I've gone over all the other power armor in 76, it's about time I got to this. So today I'll be analysing the T65 Power Armor and to a lesser extent the Secret Service armor that were introduced with the Wastelanders update. The main problem with these armor sets is they clearly don't appear in any of the other Fallout games. So why don't they? The best way to answer this question is to start with the place you find the armor. Vault 79 was designed as a storage facility for America's gold reserves in the event of nuclear war. After the vault's construction was completed sometime around 2072, the entirety of the gold at the Bullion Depository, or as it's more commonly referred to, Fort Knox, was transported to Vault 79. The amount of money invested into the creation of Vault 79 was substantial, to say the least. And why wouldn't it be? To protect that much gold, the government would spare no expense. So how does this relate to the armor sets? Well, after I thoroughly analyze the two sets, hopefully you can start connecting the dots. If we're going to analyze the power armor, we should start with its designation. The T65 is clearly part of the T-series of power armor, so it's most likely that it was designed for use by the military, much like its counterparts. We can also determine from the model number 65 that it is in fact newer than the T60. And since the T60 was deployed at the start of 2077, it's safe to assume that the T65 wasn't put into development that much earlier than 2077. Next, we'll look at the design of the armor. The T65 definitely looks as though it was designed by professionals like the other T models, but where this armor seems to differ significantly is the armor thickness. If you compare the T60 to the T65 is clearly larger and also has a much more rounded design. In fact, there's almost no visible straight lines. Then, if we look at the stats for the T65, it has the best damage resistance and energy resistance, and the second best radiation resistance. The rounded design of the armor may be to increase the chance of deflecting kinetic force. However, deflection doesn't occur in Fallout 76 except for, I believe, 2 power armor mods, and that's targeted deflection, not random like striking at an angle would be. So if deflection chance doesn't factor into the stats of power armor, it would most likely just be reflected in-game as simple damage resistance. But that wouldn't account for that much damage resistance, and it also wouldn't affect the energy or radiation resistance. The increased armor I mentioned before would increase all 3 of these stats, but again it wouldn't increase them by that much. The staggering gap between the T65 and its predecessor leads me to believe that the actual armor itself is made from different materials to the T60. The exact numbers of the T65's resistance are 565 damage resistance and 470 energy and radiation resistance. To get this balance between resistance, it's most likely the armor is a titanium-based alloy with possibly steel included in the mix, and I believe that a 10 micron silver coating could have been used as well. That's just speculation though. This game is set in an alternate future, so there could be any number of different materials that we don't know about today used on this armor. The only thing that doesn't seem to have a clear purpose is the paint. No military power armor except for the T51 has paint on the standard issue model. This isn't silver coating either, because it's not silver and the silver coating is ablative, so it doesn't easily chip. In fact, we can see what is most likely a silver layer underneath the paint. Next, we'll take a look at the Secret Service armor. The Secret Service armor is simply called Secret Service armor in-game. The armor's rounded design definitely bears close resemblance to the T65, most notably on the head with the similar rebreather looking helmet. Then, if we look at the in-game stats, out of all the non-power armor sets, Secret Service armor has the best radiation and energy resistance, both being 140, and it has the second best damage resistance at 170. The superior damage resistance is no doubt boosted by the armor shape, like the T65. As for the materials, the armor most likely makes use of titanium alloy and micron silver coating for protection, again like the T65, but the titanium at least would be used in smaller quantities. I'm not an expert on armor, but this armor is worn directly on the body with the exception of Under Armor, unlike Power Armor which is worn on a frame. So there's less absorption on the regular armor, which is why I assume the armor is made up of a composite, possibly polymer based. Then the outer layer would be the titanium alloy, coated in the 10 or maybe less micron silver, and then the paint on top. This would provide more shock absorption than just metal armor. Of course, I should hope that this armor and the power armor frame have some actual padding in them, and I guess that's what the Under Armor would be for. If you didn't know, in Fallout 3, 4, and New Vegas, Brotherhood soldiers are always wearing Under Armor when they're in power armor. And actually, in Fallout 3, that suit that the Brotherhood and some Enclave members wear, the Recon Armor, that armor was designed by Bethesda to be a suit that would connect with power armor when worn together, and as it says here, was protective padding. In-universe, you would actually need to be wearing one to properly use power armor, essentially the proto-version of the power armor frame. So I assume that whenever your character wears power armor in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, the Recon Armor is already in it. Although, with the introduction of the power armor frame, you can just hop in power armor wearing whatever. That's a topic for another time though. So, the Recon Armor would really be split into two parts, the mechanical side of it being the frame, and the other part being the flight suit-esque Under Armor seen being used by the Brotherhood. The Secret Service Under Armor is clearly a different version of the suit used by the Brotherhood, and I may have taken a very long time to explain this, but the Under Armor would provide much needed padding and comfort to the armor and power armor. And while I guess in-universe you can wear them without the Under Armor, it's probably best you don't. Now for the semi-conclusion. After analyzing these armor sets, even if I didn't get the materials used exactly right, it's clear they would be extremely expensive, more so than the standard issue military gear. The level of armor on these sets also seems more geared towards shorter range use and not so much long distance, long period use, due to their bulkiness. These attributes, as well as the grey paint scheme, lead me to the semi-conclusion that these armor sets were almost certainly primarily designed for combat inside of a vault. The reason for this being that Vault 79 has the entirety of America's gold reserves, so there's plenty of incentive for people to want to break in. This also justifies the armor being as expensive as it is. However, both sets have features that would seem useless in a vault. For instance, the T65 has what appears to be a radio antenna on the helmet, and I'm sure other power armor suits would have some sort of communication system, but the external antenna would give the T65 far better range over the others. This doesn't really seem logical when this power armor is designed to be used in a vault. There's also the fact that both sets of armor have exceptional radiation resistance. There's not much point in using radiation resistant material for armor in a vault, where the only radiation would come from a malfunction with the reactor, and that's a problem that could be handled with hazmat suits. Then the last thing is the Secret Service armor helmet, mainly the gas mask. A filtration system is common on power armor, but regular armor not so much. This, like the radiation resistance, isn't that useful in a vault. All of the previously mentioned attributes suggest that yes, these power armor sets are primarily designed for vault combat, but they're also equipped to survive in the post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's no coincidence they have the best radiation resistance of their respective classes, except maybe the XO1, but I'll come back to that later. As I was saying, the radiation resistance isn't a coincidence. The original plan for Vault 79 was to reopen after the war and restart the economy using gold. So the armor would have been designed for operation in a nuclear wasteland. I would like to go more in depth with this in a later video, but until then, now I just want to go over the lore problems with these armor sets and fix them. Now back to the start of the video, why aren't these armor sets in any other games? Well, as I already explained, these armor sets were extremely expensive and designed for Vault and then subsequently post-nuclear use. So it's possible that these sets were created specially for Vault 79, but if we were to see them again, they would probably have to have come from a vault that had something important enough in it to warrant the expensive armor. Here's a crazy theory. What if the power armor in Fallout Brotherhood of Steel was the T65? It suits the criteria somewhat, even if I doubt you'll ever find anyone who would consider that game even remotely canon, but there's some food for thought. Anyway, relating to why they weren't in other Fallout games, why didn't the Enclave use the Vault 79 gear or vice versa? I believe that the XO1 in Fallout 4, which was the best pre-war XO1, is better than the T65, but the T65 is more reliable and is a finished or very nearly finished model. The XO1, while better than the T65, is still a prototype, and when you're equipping a vault to guard the country's gold, you probably want a finished model of power armor. The presidential guards, who would also be Secret Service members, would wear the XO1 because it's the best power armor, and even though it's a prototype, they would also be in a position where their armor would always be upgraded to the latest standard and would have their armor repaired if anything malfunctioned. Once everything in Vault 79 was completed, they were trying to keep as low a profile as possible, and constantly sending power armor out to be repaired wouldn't be the best idea. Finally, it's not really law-breaking, I just want to clear this up. When you visit regs and buy the plans for these armor sets, that's just a gameplay feature. You wouldn't actually be able to just build this armor. The paint shipping on the T65 and the Secret Service armor indicates that they're somewhat old. Regs literally even talks about you buying gear. The idea of buying the plans is just for gameplay. I mean, there's no way Regs would have the Vault 94 armor plans. So that's everything on the T65 and the Secret Service armor. I hope you enjoyed this. It really took too long to make. I'll try and make the next few videos shorter than this, and, well, I'll try and produce them faster too, because I was pretty lazy with this one. Still took a while to make, aside from that anyway. So I guess that's it. Usual YouTube stuff. If you like the video, consider liking it. If you want to see more, subscribe. See you later.